Bipolar disorder can be a significantly debilitating issue, and some people may just deal with a little bit of symptoms here and there, but for a lot of folks, they can hardly get through their life in a day-to-day basis just because it's creating so many problems for them. And for most people that have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or maybe they're just dealing with bipolar type symptoms, they're just led to believe that, oh, your brain is just a little bit broken and sorry about your luck. But what if that's not the case? What if it's not about having a broken brain? What if other problems are creating these issues? So in this video, I'm going to give you some really simple body chemistry parameters that you can look at home using simple tools. You can pick up at a pharmacy or a health food store. And I'm going to help you understand how these issues can create these symptoms that you might be dealing with. And you're also going to learn about how people around the world are seeing significant improvements to these issues when they can correct these problems. You cannot miss this.
T.C. Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So I'm going to do a weird thing in this video. I'm going to explain some issues that can create symptoms like bipolar disorder. And these issues are actually going to make sense to you. That's going to be weird, right? But that doesn't mean that I want you to stop taking your medications that are helping your bipolar disorder or not listen to your doctor. This is just information for you. You still need to work with your doctor, and you still want to correct the actual underlying cause of problems before you ask your doctor, hey, am I ready to reduce or remove these medications? You don't want to just chunk stuff in the trash because you're going to create some real problems for you. So in no way am I telling you to stop taking a medication or anything like that. I just want you to understand some issues that have the ability to contribute to symptoms like this. So when we're looking at bipolar type symptoms, we need to understand that the chemicals responsible for the brain's activity are called neurotransmitters. And they include things like norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. And when we're seeing these bipolar type symptoms, it seems that these neurotransmitters are not working correctly. And the medical world tends to look at things that aren't working correctly and they blame that thing for the problem. Instead of actually looking and trying to think, why aren't these things working correctly? What's causing them to malfunction like this? And cholesterol is the perfect example. When we see high cholesterol, the medical world says, look at all the problems this high cholesterol is causing. We got to shut this down. And they just shut down your ability to produce that cholesterol so you don't have high cholesterol. Well, what we know now is that cholesterol is going high on purpose. The body's using that cholesterol to deal with a severe inflammation issue. And when you can remove that inflammation, all of a sudden the cholesterol just comes down to a normal level. So what if these bipolar type symptoms is a similar situation for some folks? So let's look into how the body works a little bit. So if mineral levels go too low in the body, a person can have a seizure. And if blood sugar goes too low in the body, the person can have a seizure. Now, if mineral levels and blood sugar both go low at the same time, a person is even more likely to have a seizure. So what if some of these symptoms are not going so severe that a person would basically have their body just shut down, where the body's saying, hey, there's not enough minerals for signals to travel through from the body to the brain and from the brain back to the body, or if there's not enough glucose for the brain to have any fuel to function correctly, so I'm just going to shut it all down and the person have seizures. What if this situation is not so severe to have seizures, but it's bad enough to create a lot of these symptoms that the people deal with? So the minerals in the system are almost like what allows the body to have electricity flow through. It allows these signals to go through the minerals and travel back and forth from the body to the brain and from the brain to the body. So if there's not enough minerals in the system, those things can't happen. Maybe it's not the neurotransmitter's fault. Maybe there's just not enough minerals for signals to travel correctly. Or maybe there's not enough fuel for the brain to function the way that it's supposed to function. If your toaster's not working, what do? You look to make sure that it's plugged in. You're making sure that it has the juice to function. You don't soak the toaster in medication or send it to therapy. You just look to see, does it have the juice to function the way that it's supposed to function? I'm trying to toast my bread here. So I'm not trying to say that therapy doesn't have benefit for a lot of people. It absolutely does. But what I'm saying is that sometimes we need to look at the problem a little more basically. Instead of trying to create these huge problems, We should look at the basics, like just does the body have what it needs to function? Now, this extreme seizure example is interesting when we're looking at bipolar issues because a lot of doctors will use anti-seizure medications for bipolar disorder. And it seems to be beneficial because a lot of the anti-seizure medications can bring benefits because they can restrict a person's ability to pee out their salts. Now they're holding more minerals in the system, and now there's more minerals for signals to travel through, and they don't see these seizure episodes. This may also be why some people benefit with the bipolar type symptoms with these anti-seizure medications. If someone doesn't have enough minerals in the system for signals to travel, then something that's going to hold more minerals in the system will allow those signals to travel and they can see some relief to these symptoms. Now, to get an idea if someone might be dealing with low minerals in the system, we can look at the blood pressure. The blood pressure is showing us the level of minerals in the system as well as like glucose and protein and even filth and junk a little bit. But when that blood pressure is low, let's say the systolic number is below 112, that's a really strong indication that there likely is not enough minerals in the system, that the minerals are low and that's why that blood pressure is low. And here's the thing, it's really common to see low blood pressure with people. When we're looking at depression cases, they almost always have low blood pressure, indicating that there's low minerals in the system and not enough minerals for signals to travel from the brain to the body and from the body back to the brain. And where you might not see this is if someone's on antidepressants or anti-seizure type medications, because a lot of these will restrict the ability to pee out those minerals and then the blood pressure will come up. But you can look at this at home. Just take your blood pressure at home with a blood pressure cuff that you can get at any pharmacy for $30 or $40 and just take your blood pressure at least 2 hours after a meal, but not first thing in the morning before you've eaten anything. You want it to be at least 2 hours after a meal. And if that systolic number is below 112, then that can be an indication that this could be part of the problem you're dealing with, not enough minerals in the system. Now, why would minerals be low? Well, there's a variety of reasons that could cause minerals to go low, but the most common problem is digestive malfunctions. So if a person is dealing with any type of digestive symptoms like burping or bloating or constipation or diarrhea or acid reflux or nausea or even skin or acne type issues, or maybe they just feel like their food just kind of sits there like a rock for 6 hours. Any of those problems are really strong signs that at least one side of digestion is not working correctly. And when digestion isn't working the way that it's supposed to, we can't bust that food apart and pull all the nutrients out of that food. Did you know that's why we eat food? We eat food to get nutrients and fuel out of that food. And if someone's digestion is not working correctly, which is extremely common these days for a variety of reasons, but when it's not working correctly, they're not getting all the minerals out of their food. Now, there's also other issues we'll talk about in a second where a person may be peeing out too many minerals, but when a person has low blood pressure and there's low minerals in the system, it's almost always having at least some type of digestive malfunction that's contributing to the problem. Now, the other thing that we want to look at is, beyond minerals, is blood sugar going too low for some of these folks? Now, if this is part of the problem, wouldn't this make a whole lot of sense? Wouldn't this make sense that a person might feel a little bit better when blood sugar is higher, but then when blood sugar dips too low, they go into one of their episodes of not feeling so great and having all of these types of symptoms? That would make a lot of sense. Making sense is a little bit weird these days, isn't it? So when we're looking at blood sugar going too low, we're usually seeing a person that's dealing with some type of hypoglycemia type issue. And maybe they're eating carbohydrates and sugars that create this sugar spike, but then their insulin is acting a little bit more like a bully. It's almost working too efficiently, and it sweeps out too much blood sugar too fast, which creates this sugar crash. And it's in this crash that the body gets a lot of problems going on. Now, what we understand is that when the mineral levels are high enough, those can buffer the low blood sugar. And if minerals are too low and blood sugar is high enough, the blood sugar can buffer the low minerals. So they can buffer each other, but the problems happen when minerals are already too low and then blood sugar crashes. Now the problem is going to be in a big way. Another issue that can come along with these hypoglycemic type reactions to carbohydrates for some folks is that when your insulin is overly powerful, and it's kind of like this big bully, the person doesn't need to produce a lot of insulin to deal with the carbohydrates that are coming in. And when insulin levels are very low, some people will pee out more of their minerals, and now those minerals are going low again. So what you can look at home is you can get some urinalysis pH testing strips. You can get these in most health food stores or on Amazon. And you can look at the pH of your urine at least 2 hours after a meal. And if it's above like 6.4 or so, that can sometimes correlate with insulin that is overly powerful and acting like a big bully. So if you see this urine pH high, then you go, oh wow, now this might make sense to me that I'm having sugar crashing issues. Maybe I can do something about this to relieve this symptom a little bit. This sugar crashing issue also helps us understand why so many people are seeing massive improvement to their bipolar type issues when using a ketogenic diet. And this is also helps us understand why they've been using a ketogenic diet for decades to improve seizure issues. What we're doing is we're looking at the fact that with a ketogenic diet, we're removing carbohydrates almost altogether, which removes those sugar spikes and the crashes. It's the crashes where the real trouble happens, so you remove the crashes by removing the spikes. So when someone's eating a ketogenic diet, and I'm not suggesting you start doing a ketogenic diet right now, we're going to talk about some problems this can create too, but we need to understand why so many people see such improvements with this. Now, there's another factor with the ketogenic diet is that the brain can use ketones for fuel. So if blood sugar goes too low, but the person's creating ketones from eating a ketogenic diet, now the brain has this backup fuel source to function, and it doesn't create all of these symptoms. So some people feel a ketogenic diet can be beneficial because it's removing the spikes and crashes in blood sugar, and some feel like it's more about the fact that you're creating these ketones and this extra fuel source for the brain that's helping the brain function better. And who cares? You know, the benefits are coming, so we don't have to know exactly what's happening. It seems like both things have the ability to create improvement in this situation. But here's the problem. If I have a bipolar client come on board, I don't start them off with a ketogenic diet because in the beginning, it can be a difficult transition for the person. While the person is lowering their carbs enough for the body to start making ketones, well, now they don't have that glucose fuel source anymore, but the body's not making ketones, so they're going to be in a real tough spot. They're going to have exaggerated symptoms in a big way. So I don't feel like a person has to do a ketogenic diet to correct these issues, but for those who want to, I don't like to see people jump right into that. I like to see them correct issues like maybe if their urine pH is too high, indicating that insulin may be too much of a bully. I like to see them correct that problem first. Or if they have low blood pressure and maybe mineral levels are low, I like to see them fix any digestive malfunctions so they can bring more minerals in the system, as well as maybe supplement with some minerals and take some other steps to lift those minerals. We'll talk about that in a minute. But while they're doing these steps, I like to see them use more of a low or medium carb type diet so that they're not creating the huge spikes and crashes in blood sugar, but they're still supplying the body with enough glucose so that it can function while there's not enough minerals in the system, or maybe while the body is not making ketones for this backup fuel source. Now they have enough to function, but they're not creating these big problems by the huge spikes and crashes. So maybe they're removing things, like grains and, pasta and rice and bread and all these things that really create the big spikes, especially sugar. Sugar is the biggest one, and liquid sugars are the worst. And maybe they're replacing those with some real food sources of carbohydrates that are not so high. Like maybe half of a sweet potato at a time, or half a yam, or maybe some butternut squash or Brussels sprouts. These foods that include carbohydrates, but not such a huge spike and crash is going to come along with them. What's nice about this approach is when you talk to your doctor about this, most doctors are not going to be completely offended about you wanting to change your diet a little bit. They're usually going to say, well, that's not going to do anything, but you can go ahead and do that anyways. So that's usually not going to be a huge problem for most folks. And you'll want to talk to your doctor before you make changes, but a lot of people are seeing a lot of improvements when they just take these steps. And these are things that a person can do at home, and it's kind of nice when you can put your health back in your own hands a little bit. Another thing that we need to consider with these bipolar type symptoms is inflammation issues. A lot of people talk about that this could be created by inflammation in the brain or in the body. And so we might need to remove some inflammatory foods like all seed oils. If you don't understand the problems that seed oils like canola oil and corn oil and all these vegetable oils that people are using, if you don't understand the problems those can create, you really want to get rid of those oils as soon as you can because they can be very problematic. And this may also help us understand why people see improvements sometimes with bipolar type symptoms when they're doing like a paleo diet or a Whole30 type approach, where they're removing a lot of these inflammatory foods like the seed oils and foods like grains and all this processed junk that can create a lot of inflammation. So the most important thing to understand is, instead of just looking at your symptoms, you really want to look at your bioindividuality. And if you can look at some of these little tests that you can do at home, and if your body chemistry matches up with some of these things that we're talking about, well then what happens if you look to improve those issues? Do you see improvement to your symptoms? That would be a pretty big deal if you did. So if you need help doing this, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, walks you through how to do these simple tests with these simple tools at home, and then understand the results of those tests. And if you're dealing with any type of digestive symptoms, the book also walks you through how to figure out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can take to improve those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole book totally for free. And you can get that to walk you through those steps and understand what's going on. I'm also going to put some links to some research to help you understand the benefits of ketogenic or low-carb approaches with bipolar, and some other studies that kind of confirm some of these things we talked about in this video today. And those will be in the description below this video. And if you hate to read, we also have a totally free digestion course that walks you through the same steps that my book does. And we'll put the link for that free course in the description below as well. For now, it's just important to understand that if people are seeing improvements to these issues when they're making some of these changes, who's to say that you can't see some of these improvements as well? And if you already know that your blood pressure is low and then maybe you have some signs of low mineral levels, jump over right now and watch our video on how to boost your mineral levels. I can't wait to hear about your results.